Courtroom Shenanigans. Welcome to Courtroom Shenanigans. In this series, Cop Killers, we take a look at the most brutal murders in the U.S. against officers in the line of duty. In Episode 1, we feature Florida police officer Charles Kondek, who was murdered by convicted felon Marco Antonio Parilla Jr. We take a look at the events on the day of the murder, the capture and arrest, and highlight the key points in the trial and judicial process right through to the final sentence. December 21st, 2014, in Tarpon Springs, Florida, two calls were dispatched at 2 a.m. One was a bar fight and the other a noise complaint. Officer Charles Kondek responded and advised dispatch to assign the noise complaint to him as he was closest to the location. Investigators said Parilla was looking for someone and was banging on the doors of a home in the Grand Boulevard community. While Parilla was banging on the doors, a neighbor asked the woman, who remained in the car, to lower the music. When she refused, the neighbor called the police with a noise complaint. When Officer Kondek arrived, he approached the vehicle playing music. Kondek was unaware that convicted felon Marco Parilla Jr. was armed with a stolen gun and was wanted for an active warrant. Parilla was at the location to shoot the person he believed had snitched on him for violating his probation. As Parilla ran toward the vehicle, he suddenly saw Officer Kondek approaching the rear of the car. The convicted felon fired 7 rounds of his .40 caliber handgun at the officer, with one bullet entering the chest just above his bulletproof vest. Kondek called for backup, but did not respond after. The officer was able to fire off a couple of rounds before collapsing. Parilla then ordered the woman out of the vehicle, took the wheel, and as he fled the scene, he brutally ran over Officer Kondek. Minutes later, officers arrived to render aid, but unfortunately his injuries were too severe. Parilla was taken into custody after crashing into a vehicle and then running away on foot while being chased by police. Footage from that fatal night shows Parilla running from a car. The audio clearly highlights the attending officer's desperation to save their colleague's life.
I'm calling everybody in right now. We have an officer down. Gunshot fired. Get everybody here now. Come on! Charlie, stay with me, baby.
Born in 1991, Marco Antonio Parilla Jr. had an extensive criminal history with over 30 felony arrests and over 10 convictions. Parilla was released from a Florida prison 6 months before the murder, after serving a little more than 2 years for leaving the scene of a crash, as well as for various drug charges. Parilla later told deputies he shot Officer Kondek because he didn't want to go back to prison. A neighbor, who was a good friend of the person Parilla believed snitched on him, was interviewed for a local news station.
I feel like I missed something somewhere, or there's something else I could have did. I just look and I see a crowd of people, okay, and then like, I'm like, what the, and that was it.
Officer Charles Kondek lost his life within minutes of responding to a call early that December morning, just days before Christmas. He was 45 years old and just 3 years from retiring. Kondek served on the Tarpon Springs police force for more than 17 years. He left behind a wife and 5 children. Officer Kondek was recognized as a great listener with a calm demeanor to de-escalate situations. He was very respected for his reputation and characteristics within his community, where his legacy still lives on. Residents of Tarpon Springs shared their thoughts on the murder of Officer Kondek.
I just can't believe this. Why would someone shoot our police officers? Why? When they are protecting us.
I'm just so sorry. My heart aches for him.
I'm glad they caught him because he needs to pay for what he's done to a father who has children and for his wife. I mean, this is wrong.
I can't believe what's happening in the country today.
He was a straight officer, good officer, by the book officer. We have to protect people who protect us.
One of Charles Kondek's daughters spoke to a local news station and paid tribute to her father.
Wish I could have spent more time with him and had more father time. He was a big family man. He loved his family. He just cared about helping people. I have gotten a lot of condolences from everybody. And just walking up here and saying this means a lot. It means a lot to me and our family.
Charles Kondek Sr. also shared his pain and torment of losing his only son.
I tell him every time I'm sorry that things had to be the way they were. I have dreams of him bleeding out. I picture him shot by himself laying there bleeding out and nobody's helping him. And it's brutal. All I want now, you know, he just doesn't talk back to me, but excuse me, I'm sorry. Animals that do this, that don't respect, come up from behind and shoot, I don't care, police or anybody, come up from behind and just assassinate them like that. They're cowards.
In this next camera footage shown, you can hear Parilla's name being called out in his first court appearance.
Marco Antonio Parilla.
Marco, why did you kill that officer? You have anything to say for yourself?
I apologize to the family. That was not my intention.
You apologize?
Yes.
Marco Antonio Parilla Jr., 23, was booked into Pinellas County Jail on December 21, 2014, and was being held without bond on a charge of first-degree murder. Parilla's family member, Juana Menendez, gave an interview to a local news station and made a strange statement, claiming her nephew was a good person.
If he say he don't want to mean it to do it, it's because he's not a bad boy. He's a good guy.
Pinellas County Sheriff Bob Galtieri and Tarpon Springs Police Chief Robert Cochin shared their thoughts on the arrest of Parilla and the murder of Officer Kondek.
So when he gets there, he walks through the apartment complex and he's banging on the door. And the person who he was looking for didn't answer. He took his gun out, which was a .40 caliber handgun that had 7 rounds in it, and he fired him at the officer, striking the officer once in the upper body. His reason for shooting the officer was he, quote, felt like a caged rat. He puts the car in reverse, and he backs up out of the driveway, and he runs over the cop. As he turned north on Athens, he struck a power pole up there, just about knocked the power pole over to show you how fast he was going and the impact, how significant the impact was of the collision. He careens off the power pole and into a parked truck.
It is with a heavy heart that I have to do this. Charles Kondek, who we all refer to as Charlie K., was a man who committed his life to this profession and to his community. He made sacrifices to serve and protect the citizens of Tarpon Springs. That's one of the most devastating things. The sheriff and I were up there today when you got to deal with the kids and the wife. This makes no sense.
You have these bad guys that they get shot 10, 15 times, they don't die. You know, the good guy, one shot and he dies. Something's messed up with that.
The 28th of December 2014, 7 days after the murder, Officer Charles Kondek's funeral was held at the Idlewild Baptist Church in Lutz, Florida. Officers paid tribute to their fallen friend.
Our hearts go out to Charlie's family. We know that they are suffering. But we thank him for sharing him with us.
What was Officer Kondek like? That question hit me like a punch to the stomach. Realizing I was never going to see or talk to Charlie ever again.
October 12, 2017, nearly 3 years after the death of Officer Charles Kondek, Marco Antonio Parilla Jr. pleads guilty for first-degree murder. Pinellas County Judge Joseph Ballone accepts the guilty plea. Parilla's guilty plea meant there would be no trial for the murder. Instead, there would be one for sentencing.
I would like to first say sorry to you. I'm writing this apology to ask you for your forgiveness. I never wanted to take the life of no one, let alone a hero. I really want everyone in the community to know that I am not a monster and that I am sorry for causing pain to the community. I beg you to please spare my life and give me a chance to better myself and others around me.
For the sentencing trial, the jury would decide if he would spend his life in prison or be condemned to death row.
We're trying to persuade the jury, whenever that happens, that his life is worth saving and that he should die of natural causes in prison rather than be executed.
The state attorney has or is seeking the death penalty. We fully support that. We are talking about one of our heroes, one of our police officers that this guy murdered in cold blood.
The 13th of March 2018, Pinellas County Court. 5 months after Parilla's guilty plea for first-degree murder, the sentencing trial is now underway. Major Jeff Young of the Tarpon Springs Police Force expressed his hope for justice to be served to Parilla.
You know, it's not an easy day, that's for sure. Teresa is here every day looking for justice for Charlie. We're standing strong alongside her. Now, we're here to honor our fallen brother, Charlie. Not a day goes by that we don't think about him, the sacrifice that he and his family made.
March 15, 2018, day 3 of the trial, Officer John Gibson, who attended to his friend and colleague Charles Kondek as he lay dying from the injuries sustained, gave his testimony of the events which happened that night.
It burned into my head. It basically is looking right at me like he wanted to say something and he just couldn't. At one point, I actually see like tears well up in his eye. Run down his face.
Camera footage of the chase and officers attempting to revive Officer Kondek were played to the court and jury.
Tarpon 106, Officer Charles Kondek. All units, no response. Come on!
Listen to the state prosecutor describe the shooting.
Bang, 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 bang. Bang, bang, bang. 7 shots that man took at Officer Kondek.
The female passenger, who was waiting in the vehicle as Officer Kondek approached about the noise complaint, testified about the events of the shooting.
He pulls out his gun from the back pocket and then they start shooting at each other.
Okay, does Marco actually shoot through into the car where you're at?
Well, yeah, they shot through the car because when I look down, that's all I hear is glass.
Parilla's defense team hoped for a sympathetic jury, claiming a physically abusive childhood and neglectful mother affected Parilla's decision-making that day.
She was bad, Mom. She hit him, she beat him, she hit him with belts. No one is going to try to excuse what he did. He has accepted responsibility, and he is extremely remorseful.
Parilla's defense team had to sway one of 12 jurors for him to get life in prison over the death penalty. March 22nd, 9 days into the trial, it was time for Parilla's testimony. First, the defense team questioned him. They played the police interview footage of when Parilla was informed he killed Officer Kondek.
Mr. Parilla, at the beginning of you being in the interview room, did you know that you had shot and killed Officer Kondek?
No, sir.
Mr. Parilla, was this the first moment you realized you had killed Officer Kondek?
Yes, sir.
Before that, you did not know?
No, sir.
Parilla then apologized to the Kondek family.
I'm sorry from the bottom of my heart. And I know it wasn't supposed to be this way. I wish I could take it back. Every second of my life, I wish I could take it back.
Next was the prosecution's turn to question Parilla.
that night, you made a choice, and that was to end Officer Kondek's life. And now today, you're going to ask this jury to make a choice for you. Is that right?
Yes.
And let your life be here to communicate with your kids and families when you summarily made that decision for Officer Kondek. Does that sound fair?
No, it does not.
I don't have any questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any redirect examination?
March 23rd, nearly 2 weeks into the trial, closing statements were made by the defense and prosecution teams before the jury made its verdict.
A sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole is the appropriate and the just sentence for Marco Parilla. He has made his choices. He made his choice about Officer Kondek. He was the judge and jury.
In the afternoon of March 23rd, after 3 hours of deliberations and closing statements, it was time for the verdict. For Marco Antonio Parilla Jr., this meant life or death.
Section C, the jury unanimously find that Marco Parilla should be sentenced to death.
In an incredible turn of events, the court clerk read out what she thought was the jury's decision. Mr. Kondek's family erupted into cheers as they heard the death penalty for Parilla, but it was not the sentence they wanted. In the last section of the form, jurors had to check either yes or no for the following statement. We, the jury, unanimously find that Marco Parilla should be sentenced to death. The jury had accidentally ticked yes the first time around, which was incorrect, as the jury's decision was 2 votes for life and 10 for death. Under Florida law, all 12 jurors had to vote unanimously for the death sentence, meaning 1 vote would be life in prison for Parilla. Pinellas County Judge Joseph Ballone addressed the error to the jurors.
Members of the jury, there's a bit of an issue here with Section D, all right? This is the question in Section D. Having unanimously found that at least 1 aggravating factor has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt in Section A, we, the jury, unanimously find that Marco Parilla should be sentenced to death, okay? And you check yes, okay, which means that all 12 of you believe that death is the appropriate sentence, okay? Because if you check yes, you unanimously found that that's the appropriate sentence. So then the vote should be 12-0 for death, if that's true. Does that make sense? All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you another jury verdict form, and it's really not time to deliberate or anything. Just fix the mistake, okay?
The jury returned 20 minutes later with the form and vote corrected.
Section C, we, the jury, unanimously find that Marco Parilla should be sentenced to death. No. If no, your vote to impose a sentence of life is 2-10. So say we all, dated this 23rd day of March 2018 in Los County, Florida, signed by the both person.
The vote was what the jury intended all along. 10 chose the death penalty and 2 voted for a life sentence. In the courtroom, the cheers quickly turned to tears. Before the judge gave the final sentence, Officer Charles Kondek's wife and his father read out impact statements while facing Parilla.
Today, you killed my husband. I wasn't supposed to say goodbye to him in a coffin. I wasn't supposed to be a widow at 43. You shoved me into this life of grief, and I will never be the same person. The least you can do is look at me. That's the least you can do. You shouldn't be alive, even if it's in prison. You don't deserve the right to talk to your family, to write anybody, or to have visits with your family. You took those things from us. I wanted the death penalty for you, but either way, your time in hell is coming.
It's terrible that your sons will grow up without a good dad. And be honest, make sure you tell them that you're a murderer and that you killed a police officer. You don't deserve to have kids. You're a coward. Chucky will always be in our hearts and thoughts and missed greatly. No one will miss you, Marco, no one. Because you are the worst of the worst. And this is worst of the worst situation. Not Hitler, none of that crap. This is the worst of the worst. You're an animal, and I hope you die the worst death possible. A shiv across the neck or something. Sorry, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nearly 3 years after the murder took place, a trial lasting a fortnight, and 4 hours of deliberations, it was time for Judge Joseph Ballone to hand down the sentence to Parilla.
This is a horrible tragedy that never should occur, except for the selfish actions of his defendant by cheating at Officer Kondek 7 times just because he didn't want to go back to prison. And no doubt his actions show that this is an aggravated case. He believes aggravated the fact that the person that he killed was a unique and great member of this community. And that's what made it so tragic. Fortunately, the only thing that brought him back was that the defendant just broke. But he did it. Did intentionally, did for the fact. Shot him, ran over him, and then fled. So at this point, that can't be right. This is a tremendous tragedy for the Kondek family, the Tarpon Springs Police Department, for the community of Tarpon Springs, who's loved by all in that community. It's a tragedy for the people of Pinellas County. And Mr. Parilla will spend every single remaining day of his life, no matter how long that is, in the Florida prison system. And I know that the family was hoping for a different result, but he's going to die in prison. And only 27 now, and he's going to have a whole lot of days, potentially, for him to think about what he's done. We don't know how long he's going to last in prison. Some people that don't last very long. The life expectancy is not all that high in prison for various reasons. But every day he's there, he'll have an opportunity to think about what he's done, what he could have. The results that his actions have on this family and on this community and on the Tarpon Springs Police Department and the people of Tarpon Springs. Thank you.
Chief Assistant State Attorney Bruce Bartlett and Defense Attorney Bjorn Brunvin said this was the first time they'd seen a wrong sentence announced in a capital murder case. Todd Stewart, who was one of the jurors, said, "I was completely horrified. It just completely blew me away. It was like a nightmare. I couldn't imagine that happening to the family. They had already gone through so much." Jonathan Morales, another juror, said he felt nauseous when he heard the wrong announcement. Morales added, "The feeling of seeing the family get justice taken away with a false verdict, it was really hard to see." Marco Antonio Parilla Jr. is currently 33 years of age and is serving his life sentence at the Zephyr Hills Correctional Institution in Florida. Parilla will never be released. And that's all we got for this episode. Stay in tune for more courtroom videos.